masks for these kids when they're in the school. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is leading the charge. Here he was this week, sir.
If you're coming after the rights of parents in Florida, I'm standing in your way. I'm not going to let you get away with it.
How strong is the case that children in school should wear masks as a mitigation against Delta?
Chris, it's very strong. Go to the CDC website. You'll see more than a dozen publications showing that evidence. And already you can see in this country, the schools that have started to open without mask requirements, outbreaks are happening. And what happens then? The kids are sent home for virtual learning, which is what we were trying to avoid. It's really unfortunate that politics and polarization have gotten in the way of a simple public health measure. This mask that I'm holding has somehow become a symbol that it never should have been. This is basically just a life-saving medical device. And somehow it's now being seen as an invasion of your personal liberty. We never should have gone there. It's heartbreaking for me as a person who's not a politician. I'm a scientist. I'm a public health person. I'm a doctor. To see how masks have gotten into this very strange place with parents and others shouting about it, we never should allow that to happen.
Here was Governor DeSantis on that.
Whatever variants are around the world, they're coming across that southern border. And so he's not shutting down the virus, he's helping to facilitate it in our country.
You talk about dealing with the science, dealing with facts. I'm going to ask you about that. In parts of Texas, the positivity rate for COVID among some of the illegal migrants coming across the border is over 10%. How responsible are they for spreading, for this wave of COVID that is sweeping the country right now?
Well, it's certainly a cause of concern. They have very significant masking requirements there, but it is certainly possible. But, you know, let nobody try to say that's why the U.S. is in trouble. The rate of infection in Mexico is actually lower than it is right now in places like Texas and Louisiana and Florida. I think that's a bit of a distraction. We've got enough of a problem with our own citizens who have refused to roll up their sleeves. So maybe that would be a better thing to focus on if we're trying to end this. That seemed like it was not going to get us where we need to be. It's an issue, but it's certainly not the cause of our current dilemma.
This is National Institute of Health Director Dr. Francis Collins swatting down all of Ron DeSantis' talking points on his own pet network. First off, when it comes to masks, DeSantis has been leading the charge among Republicans to turn this simple safety measure into the ultimate culture war, because Republicans' only weapon is turning anything and everything into a culture war. And so what we're left with is the easiest and most effective safety measure behind vaccines being avoided by Republicans, allowing this virus the right claims to be so fed up with to continue to surge. And their whole basis to avoid masks isn't even well founded. Republicans try to claim that masks don't work, but it goes against the actual science by people qualified to make these recommendations as opposed to people who did their own research on Facebook. In June, a study published by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that masks are an essential element in curbing the pandemic. Dr. Rochelle Walensky, director of the CDC, reiterated this sentiment, saying, quote, "The places that are having a problem, the places that are having disease that is transmitted in the schools, are the places that are not taking prevention strategies, the places that aren't masking. The places where you see kids in the hospital, the places where you see footage of kids in the hospital, are all places that are not taking mitigation strategies to keep our children safe." And that's borne out in the evidence. Consider the 7 states that have banned mask mandates: Arkansas, Arizona, Iowa, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, and Utah. And in a number of those states, there are now no ICU beds, including Arkansas, Oklahoma, and North Texas. So if you're looking for a correlation between masking and hospitalizations, it doesn't get much clearer than that. Consider too what's happening in schools where masks aren't being mandated. In Florida's Brevard County, only days after classes started and after the school board decided to kowtow to DeSantis by voting against the mask mandate, there are nearly 500 COVID cases and roughly 1,100 people in quarantine. And that's in less than a week. And by the way, that's the same county where officials urged residents to think twice before calling 911 because so many COVID cases were taking up the first responders' time. Brevard County Fire Rescue Chief Mark Schallmeyer said, quote, "Use 911 sparingly for non-emergent issues and to save the ambulances and ER trips for those who urgently need those services." Which is especially ironic because last year, during the George Floyd protests, Republicans made hysterical ads claiming that Democrats were defunding the police and that they wouldn't be able to respond to any emergencies. none of which actually happened. And yet in Florida, Republican mismanagement of this pandemic has resulted in exactly that. Pleas not to call the police because an avoidable crisis has spread them too thin. The right's complaints can always be boiled down to projection. And after baselessly claiming that masks are a decision that only parents have the right to make, DeSantis then claimed that COVID infections are surging because immigrants are coming through the southern border. But first of all, I'm not sure where Ron DeSantis thinks the border is located, but in reality, it's about 1,000 miles away from his state, which is the epicenter of the virus. So I get that Republicans will twist themselves into pretzels to be able to point the finger at brown people, but the problem has nothing to do with immigrants and everything to do with Ron DeSantis and the people who listen to him. And beyond that, as Collins himself noted, countries to the south of us have lower infection rates. If we're really vilifying people who are spreading COVID, guess what? It's not Mexicans or Central or South Americans who we should focus on, it's primarily white Republicans. Those are the people who are disproportionately unvaccinated and therefore disproportionately spreading this virus. So if DeSantis is looking for someone to blame, he might want to start with a mirror. So look, at the end of the day, if these Republican governors like Ron DeSantis are actually concerned about COVID, instead of, per usual, blaming immigrants, he should focus on his own supporters who are the ones spreading this virus. And if Ron DeSantis was actually concerned about freedom, he'd focus more on the freedom of the children that he's supposed to be representing to survive, instead of pandering solely to the selfish ones who insist on prolonging this pandemic. The fact is that at this point, he knows the simple steps that need to be taken, the same steps that states that have successfully contained the virus are taking right now, which is to encourage masks everywhere and to encourage everyone to get vaccinated. Anything other than that, and he's willfully encouraging this pandemic to prolong itself. So when it comes to this virus, focus on what Republicans do, not what they say. Because while they make excuses that are politically expedient, their actions only serve to ensure that we remain mired in this pandemic even longer. If you enjoyed that video and you're looking for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. It's a no BS look at the top stories of the week, along with interviews with the top names in politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, and more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, click the subscribe link right here on this screen to join the more than 1 million people who've already subscribed to my channel. And finally, to donate to my Don't Be a Mitch fund, where I'm raising money for a whole raft of different voter outreach and voter registration groups in the closest states ahead of midterms in 2022, including Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas. You can find that link on this screen as well. Thanks for watching.